50 years ago, my father received a call on Yom Kippur that he never expected. An Army lieutenant, he was informed that his transportation unit was being called into emergency action. They were ordered to prepare their vehicles and have all of their gear ready to fly out ASAP. While many in the unit simply told their loved ones they had to leave, my parents got into an argument. My mother insisted on going with my father because this was no ordinary deployment. America was preparing to send its soldiers to aid Israel in the Yom Kippur War. For younger generations, it's hard for us to imagine Israel's very existence hanging in the balance while we gather here for our holiest day. Yet I know that there are many here with us in person and watching us online who lived through that terrifying time when, like Amalek from the Bible, Israel's foes attacked in a moment of weakness, using our holiest day to their advantage. Fortunately, my father's unit was told to stand down. They would not be needed. The tide had quickly changed, and despite all odds, Israel was on the path to triumph. In that moment of 1973, it was more than an attack on Israel. It felt like a threat to the Jewish people everywhere. A year after the graphic massacre of Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics, only 25 years removed from the founding of the State of Israel, and less than 30 years away from the horrors of the Holocaust, many feared not only for the lives of the millions of Israelis who were under attack, but for the future safety of the Jewish people as a whole. 50 years later, I would love nothing more than to give a sermon about how safe Israel is and how we all feel safe in today's world. Sadly, I cannot do that. While I taught on Rosh Hashanah that technology and societal evolution will not bring the end of Judaism, we nonetheless face many grave threats. For some, this feels like deja vu, for I have preached about the threats to Israel and the danger of anti-Semitism often from this pulpit. If only we lived in a world where Israel was not besieged by those who sought its destruction, a world where anti-Semitism was just a relic of the past. Alas, that is not our reality. But know that despite these serious threats, we are not without hope, for the future rests in our hands. Israel's victory in the 1973 Yom Kippur War came at a high cost. Many lives were lost, and the war inflicted a deep wound on the psyche of Israel. Israel's success, despite such impossible odds, also provided a false sense of security for the larger Jewish world, creating the belief for us that Israel was a David capable of beating any Goliath. With that mindset, we were ill prepared for the challenges that came in recent decades. Battles waged not on the field of war, but in the hearts of the world. On the global stage, Israel has been maligned as the vicious and unjust oppressor of the victimized Palestinian people. An imbalanced presentation in which only Israel is at fault for the bloodshed and the suffering. Any discourse that begins this way not only excuses the horrific acts of terrorism, bombings, stabbings, rockets, and vehicle attacks that happen even today, it ignores history. Israel did not act unilaterally against the Palestinian people. The United Nations clearly partitioned the land into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Those who identify today as Palestinian were given not only a country, but a choice. Arabs living in Israeli-controlled areas were told that they could remain there as citizens of Israel, or they could leave of their own volition and move to the newly formed Arab state. Ironically, for the hundreds of thousands of Jews who were forced into immediate exile in 1948, from places like Yemen, Iraq, Iran, and other Arab nations, they never got that option. Instead, they were told to leave places where their families had been living for millennia overnight. One also cannot forget the role that other nations played in the displacement of the Palestinian people. After 1948, Jordan took over much what was originally designated as that new Arab state. And in Jordan and Lebanon, Palestinians were forced to live in refugee camps. 75 years later, they, their children and grandchildren continue to live in those refugee camps under abhorrent conditions because it garners sympathy for the Palestinians. The Arab nations will do nothing about it because Israel alone is held accountable. Adding to all of these lies about Israel is an even more egregious demonization that has emerged recently, calling Israel an apartheid state. By definition, apartheid was the oppression in South Africa of a majority black population by a minority white population who refused blacks citizenship or voting rights. Israel is simply not an apartheid state, and using that term denigrates the suffering of the blacks who lived in South Africa. All Israeli Arabs vote. There are Arab members of the Knesset, and Arab Israelis are considered equal citizens. That's not apartheid. Those same freedoms do not exist for those living in the Palestinian Authority, much less the Gaza Strip. In those places, women are second class at best. Education is poor, and LGBTQ individuals have to hide who they are for fear that they will be killed. While untrue in nature, Israel suffers economic and political hardships from these falsehoods. Hamas rains down missiles on innocent civilians, uses UN schools and hospitals as human shields, yet Israel is the one accused of human rights violations at the UN and subject to frequent censure. European nations sanction or refuse to import Israeli products. Activists like Roger Waters take hold of these false stories and use them to encourage businesses to withdraw from Israel and tell entertainers and others not to go. The lies are taking their toll even here in our country. While the vast majority of our national leaders remain staunchly supportive of Israel, misguided social activists and nefarious organizations are taking advantage of those who champion social justice, twisting their desire to repair the world by painting Israel as the unjust aggressor and the Palestinians as victims of injustice. This is most prevalent on college campuses, where the increase in anti-Israel presence discourages young Jewish students from identifying as pro-Israel or even, in some cases, identifying openly as Jewish. The result is a great divide in which American Jews appear less connected to Israel than they have since the founding of the state. We ignore that divide between young American Jews and Israel at our own peril. When the older generation steps back, who will be Israel's ally, if not our youth? Now, 50 years ago, we would have dedicated all of our community's energy to addressing what's going on in Israel. Unfortunately, we now face threats to our own safety and well-being close to home. Though anti-Semitism was by no means absent during those 5 decades, it has now become much more visible, brazen, and present in our lives than at any other point prior to the Holocaust. I know that speaking about anti-Semitism makes us uneasy, but we cannot turn a blind eye to what is happening. As a victim of an anti-Semitic verbal assault myself, I certainly have not been able to escape conversations about anti-Semitism. And I believe that instead of running, we have to name it, to talk about its sources, and figure out what we will do from here. While the anti-Israel sentiment on college campuses is rooted in the political left, the anti-Semitism that we experience in our schools and our own community originates from the political right. The individuals who attacked me were also espousing the messages of Christian nationalism. The Goyim Defense League, the hate organization responsible for those anti-Semitic flyers that have appeared in our community, for the rallies and the recent neo-Nazi marches here in Florida, they are an offshoot of white nationalism. A leading Republican presidential candidate met with Kanye West and a leader of the Proud Boys for dinner at the height of Kanye's vocal anti-Semitism, and a different Republican candidate is scheduled to appear on the talk show soon of a virulent anti-Semite. Worse, friends, the manifestation of hate is getting bolder, as evidenced by my experience after the school board meeting in the spring. The two individuals who came at me went from calling for Christian values and demonizing the LGBTQ community inside to coming at me yelling phrases like Judaism is wrong, you're a fake rabbi, you're on the path to sin, you have no prophets, and more than I want to repeat. They were aggressively walking toward me and shouting insults. They had one purpose in mind: to try to intimidate, and they knew full well who I was. We should be concerned that they felt emboldened enough to act this way toward a leader of the Jewish community at a public space in daylight. In addition to my own experience, our students continue to contend with anti-Semitic bullying in school, with swastikas, verbal remarks, and so much more. We are seeing anti-Semitic groups using new forms to spread their fear and hate, projecting horrific messages on the side of buildings, hanging banners over freeways, and now swatting, a rash of hoax bomb scares intended to disrupt Jewish gatherings, while the instigators watch via the live stream to see the chaos they are creating. Between the anti-Semitism and the anti-Israel sentiment, we wonder if anything can be done to stem the tide of hate toward Jews. I know some feel the tightening in their chests as the tensions build. The emotional overload can feel overwhelming and even paralyzing. So let's pause. Take a breath. This is not 1973. When the Yom Kippur War broke out, the American Jewish community sat in shock. Most felt powerless. Even my father, who was ready to fly out, had no control over whether he would go or not. Similarly, when anti-Semitism raised its ugly head in previous generations, we felt ill-equipped to combat it, often accepting comments or actions that caused us pain without responding ourselves. Today, we have the power to respond. We possess the ability to make a difference through our actions and our words. And the first step, friends, is to proudly live our Zionism and our Judaism. Zionism is a word that we don't use often enough today. It's been hijacked by those who hate Israel and seek to demonize it. They portray Zionism as a negative. They say it's a synonym for colonialism, and they want to sever our connection to Israel. Well, it's time to reclaim our heritage. Zionism is not colonialism. We are not European nations seeking to colonize places and subjugate foreign people in order to grow our power and wealth. What Zionism is is the connection felt by the Jewish people to the land of Israel, a land where our ancestors walked and lived, a place where we called home for more than 1,500 years, and a place that we dreamt of returning to for the last 2 millennia. Zionism is our love for Israel and our belief that the state of Israel has a right to exist. Identifying as a Zionist does not abdicate one's ability to have a voice regarding current events in Israel. There is a misperception that our relationship with Israel has to fit into a binary. The one either mythologizes Israel as always right, or one demonizes Israel as a source of injustice. It's not a binary. We can love Israel, and at the same time, we can disagree with its policies created by the democratically elected members of its parliament. One can criticize settlements deep in the West Bank or question the hegemony of the ultra-Orthodox and still champion Israel as an exemplar for its treatment of women and other communities. You've heard me on this pulpit raise concerns over the proposed judicial changes that are possibly taking place, which I, as well as the large masses of daily protesters in Israel, believe are truly threats to the democratic nature of Israel. At the same time, those criticisms do not diminish my love for Israel. That love is unconditional, and it must be for all of us. Just as those who hate Israel want to end our Zionism, today's anti-Semites want to disrupt our Judaism. They hope that through intimidation tactics, they will be able to discourage Jews from gathering to pray or celebrate holidays. They want to accomplish what the Nazis failed to do, to silence the Jewish people. We cannot grant Hitler a posthumous victory. It is important that we keep coming to services, attending programs, and identifying as Jews. That does not mean that one should be foolish. You saw here as you came in that we take precautions with security. And should someone verbally assault you like they did to me, walk away. You cannot reason with crazy. But know that you have the power to show them that their tactics didn't work. By continuing to live proudly as a Jew in our community, we can follow the example of the Reformed congregation in Short Hills, New Jersey. They received a bomb threat. It was a hoax that forced them to evacuate during Rosh Hashanah. And what did they do? They gathered and worshiped in the parking lot, unwilling to give victory to the cowards who sought to intimidate them. Now, realistically, we cannot fight anti-Semitism alone. But fortunately, there are many out there who want to be our partners. In the aftermath of my experience at the school board meeting, I was uplifted and moved to receive countless messages of support and concern from people all across Southwest Florida and beyond. Local civic and faith leaders, as well as many concerned citizens, reached out to express their outrage over what took place. Parishioners at many of our area houses of worship heard from their ministers that next Sunday the message that anti-Semitism will not be tolerated here. And for months, my mail has included regular notes of support from complete strangers. In fact, to this day, people walk up to me when I'm out in public and thank me for speaking up at the school board meeting and to voice their anger at the anti-Semitism. That support is so powerful, and we cannot take it for granted. And so I make a point of thanking and expressing gratitude to all who reach out, because we need their voices. We need their power to help us overcome anti-Semitism. I truly believe that the number of those who oppose hate like us is far greater than those who promote it. I invite you to also join the Blue Square campaign called Stand Up to Jewish Hate. You might have seen the commercials on television. It was started by Robert Kraft. You can wear one of their pins to raise awareness of the anti-Semitism that exists and increase our allies even further. There's a basket in the lobby with pins if you don't already have one. Wear them, start the conversation, and find new partners who will be there to stand up with us. Because together with our allies, we will be able to stamp out anti-Semitism as well as other forms of hate to make this community more whole and holy. Our efforts to address the problems of today need to also include a vision for tomorrow. Now is the time to invest in our future by engaging with our children and grandchildren around the topics of Israel and anti-Semitism, Zionism, and living Jewishly. They need to hear from us, all of us, because we cannot assume they will gain it passively, especially in today's world. If we don't talk to them, they're going to go looking for it on YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, ChatGPT, and more sources than I can list. But will those sources teach them what we want them to know? Will the children of today develop their Jewish identities from social media alone or understand why Israel is so important to our people? Will they innately learn to report anti-Semitism or even understand what qualifies as anti-Semitism if we don't take the time to educate them? So share with that next generation the stories and photos from your trips to Israel. Better yet, offer to help send them to Israel to see it for themselves. Haven't been before or want to go back again? We still have space on our Temple Shalom trip that I'm leading in December. Registration closes very soon, in just a couple of weeks. In addition to travel, actively support groups that promote Israel positively and provide engaging resources. You know many of them, but help them, support them, connect people to them. The Jewish National Fund, Stand With Us, Zioness, Vibe Israel, and Israel 21C are just a few that I can name. I'm happy to tell you more. Come and find me. Similarly, teach today's youth to feel proud of their Judaism. Our children and grandchildren are always watching us, even when it seems that their eyes are glued to a screen. They notice what we are doing. And your commitment to being here or to watching via live stream, show them that belonging and connecting to a synagogue is valuable. Further demonstrate Judaism's importance by making it a priority to attend other services and programs and events. Talk with your family about what it means to you to be Jewish and why you want the tradition to carry on. 50 years from now, I want my children to be able to say that their father, like his father before him, was ready and willing to answer the call to come to the aid of Israel and the Jewish people. 50 years from now, I want all of our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to be able to say that we took our hopes for a better world, a safer world, a world where the embers of hate toward Jews in Israel lie extinguished, and turn that hope into a reality. Embrace your Judaism and your Zionism in this year of 5784. Live in ways that show that those who hate us have not and cannot defeat us. Acknowledge and engage with those who choose to stand with us. We are not alone. And together we have the power to end these scourges. Connect with the next generation and do not leave their education on these vital subjects to chance. Invest in the future of the Jewish people and the future of Israel. May the Holy One of Blessing, who watched over our ancestors, watch over us, empowering us to transform our hopes of today into the world of tomorrow. Im tirtzu, ein zo agada. If you will it, it is more than a dream. Amen.